Is it possible to forgive a betrayal that happened on the day she swore her allegiance? I never thought I'd find myself here, writing this, but I need to get this out. I don't know if I'm looking for advice, validation, or just someone to hear me. My world feels like it's been turned upside down, and I'm not sure if I can ever recover. Let me start with the beginning. I'm 29, a regular guy with a regular life. I've always believed in the concept of loyalty, friends, family, and especially in marriage. That's what made the events of the last few days feel like a punch to the gut. It all started with the wedding, our wedding. It was the kind of day most people dream about. The weather was perfect. My best friend Ethan stood beside me as my witness, and my bride, Laura, looked like she had stepped straight out of a fairy tale. I was so in love with her, so certain she was the one. We danced, we laughed, and we promised each other forever. I couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop thanking whatever higher power brought her into my life. Ethan had been my rock for years. He was the guy who had my back in every fight, every breakup, every rough patch in life. Naturally, I asked him to be my best man. He gave the perfect speech that night. Funny, heartfelt, just what you'd expect from your closest friend. But something felt off. Maybe it was the lingering looks I caught between him and Laura during the reception. Or maybe it was just my imagination, fueled by nerves and a bit too much champagne. I brushed it off, thinking, come on, it's Ethan. He's like a brother to you. The honeymoon was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives. We flew to Bali, stayed in this luxurious villa overlooking the ocean, and I thought we were stepping into our new life together. But Laura seemed distant, always tired, glued to her phone, and giving vague answers when I asked what was wrong. I told myself she was just overwhelmed from the wedding. Until the night I found the video. The night I found the video started like any other. Laura had gone to bed early, claiming she wasn't feeling well. I wasn't tired, so I stayed up, sipping a glass of wine and scrolling through my phone in the living room of our villa. That's when I noticed her laptop on the coffee table. Laura was normally protective of her stuff, but she hadn't logged out. The screen lit up, revealing a series of emails. I don't even know what compelled me to look, but something about the subject line of the most recent email caught my eye. Just for us? Ethan winking face. My stomach dropped. For a moment, I convinced myself it had to be something innocent. Maybe a joke? A funny photo from the wedding? But as I opened it, the reality slammed into me like a freight train. The email contained a link to a file-sharing website. With shaking hands, I clicked it, and there it was, a video recorded in a hotel room. The timestamp? 2 nights after our wedding. My heart raced as I watched Laura and Ethan sitting on a bed, laughing like 2 teenagers sneaking around behind their parents' backs. And then, God, I can barely type this, they kissed. Not just a peck or a slip of the moment. It was passionate, deliberate, the kind of kiss that left no room for doubt. I wanted to stop the video. I should have stopped it, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. It got worse. The laughter, the stolen touches, and eventually, the betrayal became undeniable. The woman I had just vowed to spend the rest of my life with had slept with my best friend. And on our honeymoon, no less. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding like it was about to burst out of my chest. A wave of nausea hit me, and I rushed to the bathroom, gripping the sink as I tried to breathe. My mind raced with questions. Why? When did this start? Did I ever mean anything to her? But the most painful question of all, was I just a joke to them? I stumbled back to the living room, my body shaking with anger and heartbreak. I grabbed my phone and dialed Ethan's number, fully intending to confront him right then and there. But as it rang, I realized something. If I did this now, I'd give them the chance to come up with excuses, to deny it, to twist the truth. No, I needed to handle this carefully. I needed to make them both face what they'd done. So I hung up and sat there, staring at the dark screen of Laura's laptop. I had the proof. I had the upper hand. But the weight of betrayal, of knowing the 2 people I trusted most had been sneaking around behind my back, felt like a physical wound. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My wife was in the next room, blissfully unaware that her lies had finally caught up to her. And Ethan, my so-called best friend, was probably somewhere laughing, thinking he'd gotten away with it. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know that everything was about to change. The next morning, I stared at her as she moved around the villa, humming softly while preparing breakfast. It was surreal. How could she act so normal? Didn't she feel the weight of what she'd done? Every smile she gave me felt like a dagger, every word like a taunt. I wanted to scream at her, to make her explain herself, but I forced myself to stay calm. Not yet. Not until I could confront them both. Instead, I decided to test her. I casually asked, "Hey, have you talked to Ethan since the wedding?" She froze for half a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. "No," she said, her voice just a touch too casual. "Why would I? You're the one who's close to him." The lie made my blood boil, but I kept my face neutral. "Just curious," I replied, forcing a smile. "You know, he's been like a brother to me for years." Her lips twitched into a smile, but there was something guarded about it. I wondered if she could tell I was onto her. I almost wanted her to confess then and there, but she didn't. She just changed the subject and went on with her day like nothing had happened. Later that afternoon, I made up an excuse about needing some air and left the villa. I found a quiet cafe by the beach and called Ethan. "Hey man," he answered, his tone as chipper as ever. "How's married life treating you?" The audacity. I clenched my fist, barely able to keep my voice steady. "It's been great. Actually, I wanted to ask, are you free to meet up when I get back? I've been meaning to catch up." "Sure thing," he said without hesitation. "You sound serious, though. Everything okay?" "Oh yeah," I said, my voice tight with forced cheer. "Just some things I need to clear up." We hung up, and I sat there for a while, staring at the waves crashing against the shore. My mind replayed every interaction we'd ever had. The times he'd had my back, the secrets we'd shared, the trust I'd placed in him. I wondered how long he'd been looking me in the eye while betraying me behind my back. By the time I returned to the villa, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this slide. They had to face the consequences. That evening, while Laura was in the shower, I transferred the video from her laptop to my phone. I needed it as evidence for what I wasn't sure yet, but I wasn't letting it disappear. Once that was done, I sat down at the dining table, waiting for her to join me. When she came out, wrapped in a towel and looking so casual, I felt the anger rising again. But I stayed calm. "Laura," I said, my voice steady but firm, "we need to talk." Her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" I slid my phone across the table. The screen paused on the video. "Explain this." Her face went pale as she looked at the screen. For a moment, she said nothing, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for words. Finally, she whispered, "I can explain." "Go ahead," I said, my voice cold. "I'd love to hear it." And that's when the excuses began. She claimed it was a mistake, that it had only happened once, that she didn't know why she did it. She swore she loved me and begged me to forgive her. But the more she talked, the less I believed her. How could she love me and do this? And with Ethan, of all people? I cut her off. "Save it. We'll talk when we get home." The rest of the trip was a blur. She cried. She pleaded. But I kept my distance. Inside, I was numb. All I could think about was what I'd do when we got back. How I'd confront Ethan. How I'd pick up the pieces of my life. What I didn't expect was the twist waiting for me when I finally confronted him. The day after we returned home, I felt like a man walking toward his own execution. My emotions were a storm: anger, betrayal, confusion. But I knew one thing for certain. I needed answers from Ethan. I called him and set up a meeting at a quiet bar where we wouldn't be interrupted. When I arrived, Ethan was already there, sitting casually in a booth, sipping a beer. He looked up, smiled, and waved me over like nothing had happened. His confidence was infuriating. "Hey man," he said as I slid into the booth across from him. "What's up?" I didn't respond. I pulled out my phone, placed it on the table, and hit play on the video. His grin vanished as he watched, his face going pale. When it ended, I looked him dead in the eyes. "Explain this," I said, my voice cold. He swallowed hard, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, I know what it looks like. What it looks like? I snapped. It's exactly what it looks like. My wife on our honeymoon with you. How long has this been going on? He hesitated, his eyes darting away. It started a few months before the wedding. I didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't mean for it to happen? I leaned forward, my voice rising. You were my best man, Ethan. My best friend. And you were sneaking around with Laura the whole time? You both swore you loved me while doing this behind my back. I messed up, okay? He said, his tone defensive. But it's over. I told her we couldn't keep doing this. And you think that makes it better? I shook my head, laughing bitterly. You didn't even care enough to stop before my wedding. You just wanted to have your fun, didn't you? Ethan's face twisted into something almost arrogant. You don't get it, do you? He said, his voice low. She came to me. She said you weren't enough for her, that you were too focused on work, that you didn't make her feel wanted. I wasn't trying to steal her. She made the first move. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. So now it's my fault? I said, my voice shaking. You're blaming me for your betrayal? I'm just saying, he said, leaning back in his seat. Maybe you should have seen this coming. I stared at him, my hands clenched into fists. The man sitting across from me wasn't the friend I thought I knew. He was a stranger, cold and calculating. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about a moment of weakness. Ethan had enjoyed it, stealing something that wasn't his. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. You're dead to me, I said. Stay out of my life, and stay away from Laura. If I ever see you again, you'll regret it. I didn't wait for his response. I walked out of the bar, my heart pounding. But as I stepped outside, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a message from Laura. We need to talk. Please come home. When I got home, she was waiting in the living room, pacing nervously. As soon as she saw me, she rushed over. I know you talked to Ethan, she said. But there's something else you need to know. I stopped her with a raised hand. Save it. I know everything. No, you don't, she said, her voice trembling. I'm pregnant. I froze. Her words echoed in my head, over and over. Pregnant. I couldn't tell if I felt anger, despair, or disbelief. Is it mine? I asked, my voice cold. Her lips quivered. I think so. I don't know for sure. I stepped back, staring at her like she was a stranger. You don't know? My voice cracked. How could you let this happen? How could you destroy everything we built? I'm sorry, she cried. I never meant for this to happen. I love you, I swear I do. Please, let's figure this out together. Together? I laughed bitterly. There's no together anymore, Laura. You and Ethan destroyed that. She fell to her knees, sobbing, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. My mind was already made up. We'll get a paternity test, I said, my voice hollow. But even if the baby is mine, we're done. You've taken everything from me. Everything. I left that night, taking nothing but a bag of clothes and the shattered pieces of my dignity. Over the next few months, the test confirmed what I'd feared. The baby wasn't mine. I filed for divorce the same day. Ethan's life fell apart soon after. Word of his betrayal spread, and he lost his job, his friends, and his reputation. Laura tried to reach out, but I blocked her. I couldn't bear to see her or hear her voice. It's been a year since it all came crashing down. I've rebuilt my life, though the scars remain. Trust is hard, but I'm learning to move forward. One thing I know for sure, betrayal doesn't define me. I survived it, and that's what matters.